All right, so we're going to be talking about animal cells, plant cells, and just basically outlining the differences between a plant cell and an animal cell, and just overall understanding cells and all that stuff. So let's talk about cells. What are cells? So basically cells are the basic units of life, essentially, right? So that's what cells are, the basic unit of life. They make up everything. So it make up me, anything that is considered living, it is made up of cells, every single thing. So me, you, the dog, the cat, the rat, the fly, all of them something here are made up of cells, right? Because they're the basic units of life. Now this probably don't necessarily relevant, but or actually this is relevant. So basically there is an acronym, right? There's an acronym called the GRIM-NER. GRIM-NER, that's how many learn it, but basically GRIMNER. So GRIMNER. So this is GRIM-NER. We don't know if you can see it or not, but basically these are what outlines the characteristics of life. So basically once an organism or once a creature is able to perform all of these characteristics, then we can consider them to be a living organism, basically. So the first thing is the G. So the G stands for growth, essentially, right? So in order for something to be living, it needs to grow. It needs to not reproduce, and not get there yet. It needs to be able to grow, basically. It needs to divide. It needs to get bigger. It just needs to show some, some development, basically. So in order for us to say that something is living, we need it to be able to grow. The next part is the R. So the R, we can get to reproduction now. So in order for something to be considered a living organism, we need it to basically reproduce. And basically that is why we don't consider viruses to be living organisms, because they cannot reproduce. They do not have any structure or any way to reproduce on their own. They literally depend on host cells in order to take action, basically, because viruses are not living. They don't grow, they don't reproduce on their own. They aren't able to do any of these. Well, I won't say any, but they aren't able to do majority of these things, and that is why viruses are not classified as being living. Next one is irritability. So the I, which would be irritability / sensitivity. So in order for something to be considered living, it needs to be able to respond to stimuli in the environment, right? So for example, if I'm sitting right here right now and a mosquito come bite me, I need to feel so the mosquito bite me and realize, oh, the mosquito bite me, and kill the mosquito. So basically, in order for something to be living, it needs to be able to respond to stimuli. For example, if you have a lion in a jungle, and no, maybe that's one bad example. So you have one cat or something, and the cat realizes the dog run him down. Basically, him pick up, okay, the dog already behind him and want to catch him. So basically, it's responding to the stimuli in the environment and acting upon it. Just like if I'm sitting right here right now, and I say, oh God, man, look how me I get hot. That's a stimulus, right? And my reaction is to respond. So in order for something to be living, it needs to be able to respond to stimuli in the environment. So that is what we consider irritability / sensitivity. Then you have movement. So in order for something to be considered basically living, there has to be some form of movement. You don't have to be like a big movement, but it needs to be able to move in order for us to consider it to be living. Then you have nutrition. In order for something to be living, we need it to be able to feed, to take in nutrients, nourishment, and all that stuff. Then the next one is excretion. So in order for something to be considered living, there has to be some form of excretion, some method of getting rid of waste in the body, right? So you don't have to be a human being, but you get what I mean. You need to be able to excrete and get rid of the waste in the body. Then of course you have respiration, and respiration and breathing is two different things. But basically, in order for you to be living, you need to respire. You understand? Okay. So basically, that's just a rundown of the characteristics of living organisms. Yeah. So back to cells. So this is the basic unit of life. Now, one thing to note, or actually three things to note, is that there's a tenant, right? So there are three tenants of the cell theory, right? It might help you understand cells a little bit better. So basically, those three tenants state that, okay, all living organisms are made up of cells. Cells are the basic unit of life, and that all cells arrive from pre-existing cells. So those are the three cell tenants, right, of the cell theory. So that might help you understand it a bit better. Now, okay, let's talk about the plant cell, the animal cell, the two, main types of cells. So in our animal cell, what do we expect to see? Now, when we did in grade 9, my biology teacher did draw like one circle. One circle. So if you go on Google and write in animal cell, you're going to see this big elaborate thing. You just need to know how to draw like a simple something, you understand? So you just need to get the main stuff involved. So make on blank paper and let us see. So basically, we're going to draw our animal cell. So what do we need for our animal cell? As you can see, this is blank. It's a blank paper. Now, we need for the animal cell. The first thing that we know about animal cells is that they have a cell membrane. So we're going to draw a cell membrane first. So we draw the cell membrane, right? Good. We have our circle. So we cell membrane then. Now we have our cell membrane. Do we expect to add a cell wall to this cell membrane in the case of an animal cell? Absolutely not. We don't have cell walls for animal cells. So no cell wall. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the organelle, right? The organelle that controls all the cellular activities. So we're going to add in that particular organelle, and that organelle is called our nucleus. So we're adding our nucleus, right? It don't even matter where you put it, but for me, we just like to draw it at the center. So we put the nucleus in the center. Now, the next thing we're going to add is we're going to add our powerhouse. So our powerhouse, so we just draw our powerhouse, and you can guess where you think the powerhouse be. The powerhouse is our mitochondria. And basically you can see it, mitochondria. So all the Krebs cycle and all those stuff take place in the mitochondria, right? So do we expect to put in chloroplast into this animal cell? Absolutely not. That's a characteristic of plant cells. So we got that in with our nucleus, our mitochondria, our cytoplasm, we have our cell membrane, and we can put in some ribosomes, right? We can put in our ribosomes, some little ribosomes in there, right? And basically this is just like a simple diagram. Now if we're talking elaborate, like knowing the animal cell, what we would expect having our nucleus and the nuclear envelope that's around it, right? We would expect that the endoplasmic reticulum should be attached to it. That is what we expect, right? So we can't really draw, but you see the endoplasmic reticulum, you can see it right there. Oh, and by the way, those little circles that you see around, those are called ribosomes. So basically, ribosomes can be found in two places. They're either they're either free floating in the cytoplasm, as you can see here, or we can find them in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Yes, rough endoplasmic reticulum. So we're going to have one side being a smooth, one side being a rough, and bear in mind that this is a very simple drawing, right? So we're gonna get our small rough endoplasmic reticulum. So one side is smooth and then one side is rough. So what else do we need in our animal cell? So these are some of the main organelles, but alright, let's see now. We would probably need our Golgi apparatus in there as well. And by the way, you realize that there are some foldings in the endoplasmic reticulum. There are also some foldings in the mitochondria, and then in our Golgi apparatus, Golgi body, the same thing. You're going to have some more foldings. So let's get that done. You have the rough ER and then you have the smooth ER. So basically the rough ER is responsible for basically producing proteins, right? That is why you have the ribosomes there. So overall the function of ribosomes is to produce proteins. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum on this side, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum more so is responsible for, like, I'd say the production of lipids and like steroids, those kind of things, cholesterol, and got something there. So that's what the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is responsible for. Now, as I said before, this is the Golgi apparatus, Golgi body that I just draw, and basically it is the packaging center within the cell. You just need to know that. So it stores through different materials and stuff like that. So that's what the Golgi apparatus does, as you can see right there. Now, we said that these little small dots are circles. Basically, we said that those are the ribosomes. Now we are going to need some vacuoles. So these bigger circles that you see in there now, those are your vacuoles. So basically, vacuoles help to get rid of waste within the cell, essentially, right? Absorbs water. So it's like a storage center, absorbs water and those stuff, while at the same time helping to excrete stuff, right? So that's our vacuole, right? What else are we missing? We can also include our lysosomes. So basically, lysosomes are what breaks down waste materials in the cell, right? So lysosomes break down these waste materials, and then that's how the vacuole takes over and discards these materials from outside of the cell. So let's draw our lysosomes. And I think the lysosomes are produced by the Golgi body, the Golgi apparatus. So okay, too much circles. So let's see how we can represent this. So make this with a little, okay. Okay, so bear in mind that this is not the best representation of how it is supposed to look. This is just a rough drawing, but the dark circles, those are the lysosomes, and so that those are what breaks down waste substances within the cell. So pretty much. So if we go through it again, we have our nucleus, which basically controls the cellular functions of the cell. We have our lysosome that we just drew. Obviously, that lysosome basically breaks down materials in the cell. Our mitochondria is a powerhouse. It is what produces the energy, and uses the energy to produce ATP and all that stuff in order to keep the cell running. So it's a powerhouse. Then this is the vacuole. We say it stores and stores water and different stuff, stores materials, but at the same time acts as an excretory organelle at the same time. We have our rough endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Guess what? This one makes makes lipids and steroids, and this one makes proteins. That is why the ribosomes are on it. We have the ribosomes that are free floating within the cell. Alright, and then we have our Golgi body down here, which basically we say is the packaging center for the cell. So this is like a rough work of a typical animal cell basically. So it's not complete. There are some other different organelles, like what I want here called paroxysome, and so yeah. So we're not gonna put in exactly everything, but this is just like a rough draft. And you know that in the nucleus you have the nucleolus and the nuclear envelope and stuff in there, but we're not really getting into detail and drawing all of that stuff. So the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, right? So the space in between all of these organelles, that is the cytoplasm, right? So that is the typical plant cell, not typical plant cell, typical animal cell. Now we're going to do a very simple drawing for the why am I say animal for plant? We'll do a simple drawing for the plant cell. Yeah. So plant. Let's do it. Alright, so the first thing is that we know that the plant cell has a fixed shape, right? So that's the first thing we start off with, it having a much more fixed shape. As you can see with the cell, the plant, I'm saying the wrong thing. Okay, this is the animal cell, right? It doesn't have a fixed shape. It's circular. It's irregular shape, right? There's no fixed shape. The plant cell, however, does have a fixed shape, and the reason why it has a fixed shape is because of its cell wall. So now within plants have a cell wall that is actually made up of cellulose, right? So it's made up of cellulose. So I'm gonna draw it. Alright, so it's made up of cellulose, yeah. So that is the cell wall, and then the other line, cell membrane. Right? So now the first thing we're gonna add into our plant cell is a very big vacuole. And the reason why we put a very big vacuole is because due to the nature of plants, right? So due to the nature of plants, they need a large vacuole to absorb water and all that stuff. So the vacuole actually takes up a major amount of space within the plant cell. So we're just in a simple diagram, put in some mitochondria, we're going to put in some, let's add our nucleus, right? So put in a mitochondria, put in our nucleus, and now there's something going to be added into this plant cell that wasn't in the animal cell. So the first thing we made mention of was actually the cell wall that's made up of cellulose. Now in our plant cell there's something major that we need to add in. So see, there we have our big vacuole, we have mitochondria, and we have our nucleus over here. So can't even shade the nucleus, but what are we missing? Something major, and that thing is actually chloroplast. Now chloroplast, because listen, the function that plants carry out, that animals just don't do overall, is that animals are heterotrophs, and that basically means that we feed off of other organisms, right? We all are heterotrophs, so we cannot make food ourselves. Plants, however, plants are autotrophs, so basically they are able to produce their own food. So this being a plant cell, they're able to carry out photosynthesis, meaning that they can carry out their own food. Okay, so that is a plural. Wonder if me overlap. Yeah, so the circles them without anything are the chloroplast. So we have a lot of chloroplast. Can draw a little bit more? We have a lot of chloroplast within our plant cell, right? A lot of chloroplast. So then we're going to add some small ribosomes, right? Let's look at some small ribosomes in it. Now endoplasmic reticulum and all of those other stuff, we're not gonna add them into the plant drawing, right? So basically we just want to outline the main features of both. So the main things about the plant cell you need to remember is that one, the cell wall is made up of cellulose, we have a huge vacuole, we have mitochondria and those stuff. They share quite a bit with the animal cell, but basically you need to remember chloroplast and the cell wall specifically for your plant cell, and a huge vacuole. Look at the size of the vacuole and then look at the size of this in the animal cell, right? So this is just a simple representation, but it's not the full, you understand what I mean? It's not the full representation of a plant cell because there are more organelles within our plant cell, but these are just the main one's the nucleus, the large vacuole, or mitochondria, and our chloroplast, and some ribosomes, and your cell wall, and yeah, and cell membrane is okay. So it's not an exhausted list, there's more to it, but this is just to give you a basic understanding of cells essentially, right? So there's some basic understanding of cells, and this is just my little representation. But anyways, this is going to be episode 1 of the biology series, right? So this is going to be episode 1 of the biology series, and we're going to continue this, and it's mainly targeted towards CSEC biology. I think CSEC biology, and maybe we talk a little bit about some other things in there that might help you understand it better, but it's mainly CSEC biology. Alright, so that's it for the first episode of the biology series, right? I think that's it. Okay, so